CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Since Dr. Abiy Ahmed became Ethiopia's prime minister in April, the country has seen some of the most fundamental reforms unthinkable not so long ago. In just 6 months' time, Prime Minister Abiy has lifted the state of emergency, broadened the space for political participation, liberalized the economy, and in a historic move, reconciled with his Eritrean counterpart, ending 20 years a state of war. But Abiy's reforms are not without challenges. Now, while some applaud the new opportunities, others are concerned Abiy's bold approach is departing from a development state strategy that has seen Ethiopia's annual GDP growth at an impressive 10% for the past 10 years. So how far can Abiy's reform agenda go? And with the July peace deal with Eritrea gaining international acclaim, how is Ethiopia's new chapter under Prime Minister Abiy shaping events in the Horn of Africa region? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, not only Ethiopia, but the rest of Africa and the world have all been stunned by the drastic winds of change that have swept the East African country since April this year, when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in. My colleague Girum Chala is in Addis Ababa, and he paints us the picture of Prime Minister Abiy's reforms on the ground.
Abiy Ahmed took up the top job in Ethiopia 6 months back, replacing the resigned Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn. During the past 6 months, however, Abiy has introduced major reforms ranging from widening the political space to taking steps to liberalize the economy. This is Obang Meto, an Ethiopian rights activist and CEO of the US-based Solidarity Movement for a New Ethiopia. Obang says Abiy has achieved a lot within a short period of time in his quest of creating a better Ethiopia.
The Abiy coming to power, he has done some things in the last 6 months, which was never been done in the last 27 years. Ethiopians were speaking a language of ethnicity is going to explode. Ethiopia and its emergence of, a version of the failed state, and it will be. But for him coming into power, it has changed drastically in a way that no one would have ever thought of it.
The Ethiopia-Eritrea almost 2 decades of deadlock got answers within the last 6 months too. The rapprochement between the two states is still stunning many. Back home and on the economic front, Abiy has also introduced major reforms. The plans include selling minority shares of successful state-owned enterprises such as Ethiopian Airlines and Ethio Telecom. Abiy Ahmed's latest move was a cabinet reshuffle. The parliament's appointment of a cabinet, of which half of it is occupied by women, has managed to get Ethiopia positive global attention and became headliner on major media outlets. Ethiopians too are happy and welcomed the woman minister's appointment.
Oh, it made me so happy. I think it's excellent for Ethiopians, women in general. I think there are a lot of women who will look up to this and will be inspired and will look for a position in higher level. I think it's really good.
It's a very bold move by the Prime Minister, and I'm very happy about it as a woman and as an Ethiopian, as an African as well. I think they're very capable, and I'm glad it's with merit. The appointments with merit. It's just not by face value if we have this many women.
Still, the new Ethiopian administration has serious challenges it's facing at the moment. Insecurity and ethnic-based violence are at the top of the list. Ethiopians will go to polls in less than 2 years' time. And by then, many opposition parties, including those who returned home after many years in exile, will contest against the ruling EPRDF party. Many say what Prime Minister Abiy's government can accomplish in the next year will hugely impact the outcomes of the upcoming general elections. Grumdara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
My colleague Girum Chala there, setting the stage for today's discussion on Ethiopia. Let's now expound on the developments in recent months in Ethiopia. I'm joined in studio by Ethiopia's ambassador to Kenya, Ambassador Dina Mufti. Also with me in studio to help us assess the regional scope of this discussion is Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali. He is the co-founder of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies and a conflict resolution expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Talk Africa. Now, Ambassador Mufti, let me start off with you and give us a bit of insight on Prime Minister Abiy here, because he's seen as a reformist prime minister. At 42 years of age, he is Africa's youngest leader today. Some of the reforms he's implementing in Ethiopia are seen as quite radical. Give us an insight into some of the fundamental changes that he's trying to make.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me at your show. And well, you are right. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, is a reformist leader in Africa, and he has been doing a lot since he assumed power in the country. In a short while, he has taken so many radical socio-economic measures that can transform the socio-political landscape of that country, as well as that has a fundamental impact on the region as well. One of the things he has done was the socio-economic transformation, the political socio-economic transformation within the nation, in the sense that he expanded the political space, political landscape, by widening the political playing field for all political entities in the country. He released a lot of prisoners who were assumed to be quote-unquote political prisoners. In fact, he declared amnesty for those who were considered to have sins, that's quote-unquote political mistakes. So he has radically taken serious socio-economic measures that could transform that country. He has also took a measure that would solve the misunderstandings that we have had with our neighbors, particularly Eritrea.
Right.
And that also is a very big measure.
We're going to talk about Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti, Somalia situations in a minute. But Dr. Mustafa, let me get your thoughts on this, because as the ambassador says, some of the radical measures includes expanding the political space, but there are also some major economic reforms that the Prime Minister has undertaken. Your thoughts on those reforms, and have they come as a surprise to you?
No, Beatrice, not coming as a surprise. These reforms were long overdue. Ethiopia is one of those countries that had registered very consistently very high economic growth. And with the rising population, it's very important that Ethiopia maintains the consistency of the economic growth. Now, without reforming Ethiopia, the economic structures there, democratizing the country further, Ethiopia was bound to have this high, sometimes up to 10% growth coming down. And of course, the increasing role of the diaspora in Ethiopia's economic, which has been supporting Ethiopia's economically for a very long time. The diaspora, Ethiopians in diaspora were actually demanding that they need to participate more in the economic growth of their country. The other bit is the foreign debt, which is a problem for most countries in Africa, increasing foreign debt, and then the foreign exchange volatility for the birr, which saw the devaluation of the birr by, I think, about 15% in 2017. It was very clear that reforms in Ethiopia, both political and economic, was a matter of fact just to happen.
Ethiopia has had a very strong state development situation there. Compare with us over the last 27 years. What is the biggest fundamental change or deviation that Ethiopia has taken now under Prime Minister Abiy that was there during Prime Minister Meles Zenawi?
It was true that Ethiopia was doing very well as compared to most of the countries in the region. It was one of the fastest growing countries over the last 15 years, for that matter. It used to register double-digit growth consistently for years. However, there are certain limitations, socio-economic and political limitations that should have been overcome. And also he felt taking on board Ethiopians of all sorts, which some of us, some of the sectors, some of the social sectors felt alienated and were not on board. He actually realized that as well. This is what Dr. Mustafa was talking about.
Right.
It's about mobilizing the huge diaspora population. It's about helping them to overcome their sense of alienations. It's about empowering everybody else, empowering women, the youth, the elderly, and all other sectors of the people. These are some of the things that the current Prime Minister has taken. So
there are quite a few points of diversion here from the 27 years over the last 27 years. But Dr. Mustafa, let me look at the economic aspect here, because consistently Ethiopia's economy has delivered about 10% economic growth over the last couple of years, and the state development model seems to have been working for Ethiopia. So what do you think, though, involved the rewriting of Ethiopia's economy, because it has been working up until this point?
The way the global economy is going, Beatrice, is that pretty much more interconnected than it was before. You need to have new ideas coming in, and it's the people. Ethiopia, with a country of, I think, 100 million plus population, when you have good ideas from, and it's a young population in telecoms, in new media, and economy that is globalizing, then you have a huge number of people, including business companies and individuals, that are engaged in production. And the young people, and you can see that across Europe, across Asia, the young people are generating, are coming up with ideas that are generating tremendous amounts of resources, particularly in the media industry. Beatrice.
Right. In terms of the political space, though, because the Prime Minister has said that there will be elections in 2020 quite soon, and he wants to open up and widen the democratic space. How is that going to happen?
That's going to happen by empowering all people who feel concerned about that country. It's about democratizing the country, about introducing full democratic credentials to that political landscape. It's about running free elections, transparent elections, elections that would be credible in the eyes of the citizens as well as the international community. Unlike the elections that we have had previously, which had some limitations that we have already sorted out. These are some of the things that we are going to do.
Dr. Mustafa, though, how are you viewing this? Because the EPDRF has been the ruling party since Prime Minister Meles Zenawi for the last 27 years, opening up that democratic space with a party that has been dominant for so long. How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, Dr. Abiy is very courageous to very soon actually be calling for an election in 2020. EPDRF is a political party that has basically been reigning supreme in Ethiopia's politics. If managed well, then Ethiopia is going to emerge a very strong country. And if it's going to make sure that the usual suspects, playing around in a kind of a tribal entrepreneurship in a country, as we have seen in other countries, including this country in Kenya, and taking advantage of tribal affiliation. If Dr. Abiy is going to manage that well, going to manage that process, and democratize in such a way that Ethiopians will feel more Ethiopian than belonging to either that Oromo sub-tribe or other tribe or Somali, Amhara, Tigray, then Ethiopia is going to emerge much stronger. It's going to take time, Beatrice. It's not going just to happen over a 2-year period. No, I think perhaps 2020 will just be one of those milestones, And this is going to be a project in itself to galvanize the patriotism of Ethiopians to support Ethiopia as a country.
And we're seeing a lot of first, though, from the Prime Minister here, a president, the first lady woman president in Ethiopia. We're also seeing a cabinet being reconstituted. 50% of the cabinet now in Ethiopia's cabinet are women. What message do you think, though, that Prime Minister Abiy is trying to send here to the region particularly?
Yeah, this is about gender parity. It's not only about gender parity, it's about equality and democratization as well. If you talk about democratic society, you cannot forget or neglect half of your population, which is women population in our case, even more than 50%. That is where an effort where the energy, the potential for development can come. And therefore, this is a male-dominated society for years, and it should be broken somewhere, and this is what the Prime Minister has done. I think it's a big lesson for Africa, which is a bit behind many countries, especially the Scandinavian countries, with regard to gender parity. I know only maybe Rwanda, Seychelles, now Ethiopia are on board, and I think I hope all other African countries, the rest also will follow this, because this is very, very important. It's needed for the development of the country. This is where the energy, the potential, the knowledge and the resource lies. And you cannot neglect half and more than half of your body and think about development.
Right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there for the moment, but the conversation on Ethiopia's reforms continues on Talk Africa after the short break. Stay tuned.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. My guests in studio, Ambassador Dina Mufti, Ethiopia's ambassador to Kenya, and Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, the co-founder of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. Still with me here in studio. Dr. Mustafa, before we get to the regional impact of Ethiopia's reforms, I just want to get a feeling from you as to the sustainability of these reforms in Ethiopia, and exactly what kind of challenges is Prime Minister Abiy likely to face in implementing his reforms?
One, there are several challenges that Dr. Abiy is definitely going to encounter. One is that the huge population. Illiteracy levels in this huge population is still very high, and this is going to be a major challenge for Dr. Abiy. The other challenge will still lie in the elites that are used to certain levels of comfort, power, and freedom to do what they want to do. That is no longer going to be there, Beatrice. And it's very clear with Dr. Abiy's democratization and the speed with which he's running, some people are going to be left behind. These people that are going to be left behind, that are used to political power, real political power, are going to want to either slow down Dr. Abiy or are going to want to stop the reform process. And this is going to be a major challenge for Dr. Abiy. Dr. Abiy seems to me as a person who's trying to bring everybody and ask Ethiopians, let's forget about our past, let's move on and build Ethiopia. That is going to be a challenge. Now, ethnic nationalism, which is a key feature of Ethiopian politics. If just recently when there were demonstrations in Addis Ababa, you know, some of the leaders and Abiy welcomed, including the rebels that fought Ethiopia from outside. Some of them wanted to fly their own flag and saying that the current flag is not what they want. That in itself is a manifestation of ethnic nationalism that is negative. There are aspects of ethnic nationalism that is positive. Dr. Abiy will need to tap into that and more importantly, ask the Ethiopians in the diaspora that have significant experience outside to come and help him in Ethiopia.
Ambassador Mufti.
Yeah, the challenges are there are various challenges actually with regard to this reform process. One is the huge population of the country. This is the second populous largest country in Africa, the population of 100 million plus. There are problems that come with dealing with the socio-economic issues of such huge populations. There are problems also that have been accumulated over the last 27 years, even more. And these are the problems that the reform process is good and it's going to deal with the problems, but it is very difficult to come out with overnight solutions for these problems. So the need for patience on the part of the population is very, very important, proper. There is a huge youth unemployment. Youth by very nature is impatient, and in fact there are negative tendencies, negative nationalism, which Dr. Mustafa has been referring to. However, I believe since this is a reform that the time has come for, it is very much difficult, if not impossible, to stop it. And I think all these hurdles could be overcome. There are solutions ingrained within the reform process themselves, because still we can see there is a huge change in terms of prevalence of peace and security throughout the country. A year ago, there had been civil disobedience, huge unrest in different parts of the country, but now more or less every part of the country is quite stable, and except some problems in here and there. This shows that the solutions that are being offered by the reforms themselves, reform process itself, is in fact helping the country in the right directions. That
peace and security and peace and stability is going beyond Ethiopia's borders, though, and another momentous occasion for Ethiopia and its peace initiative with Eritrea. How momentous is that, though, for the region?
It is, Beatrice. First of all, the tension between Ethiopia and Eritrea with intermittent violent conflict and wars, it's lasted for a very long time. The fact that now two countries, which essentially are, brothers and sisters, now coming back together means that Ethiopia is going to, Ethiopia and Eritrea, both countries are going to reap the peace dividend. Ethiopia can now use the port of Massawa, and there could be increased levels in terms of volumes of trading between these two countries, and also easier for Ethiopia to export through the port of Massawa, which should be one of the nearest for Ethiopia's exports. The creation of a peace belt, so to speak, a peace belt in that region, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and of course if we include Sudan, if the Sudanese are going to behave, is something that is going to also be a good progress for the region. This belt has been problematic. We start from the Sahel in Senegal all the way to Djibouti. Now, if this belt is going to be more peaceful, then there'll be less opportunities for terrorists to use ungoverned spaces. There'll be less opportunity for criminal gangs to operate in these places. There'll be less opportunities for organized criminal activities across this large swath of land. And this is going to translate into more peaceful societies and definitely more developed societies in that part of the world.
Right. If you could just shed some light, Dr. Mufti, Ambassador Mufti here, though, because what are some of the areas that Eritrea and Ethiopia are going to be working on jointly as a result of signing the peace accord?
Thank you. But to begin with, this peace process between Eritrea and Ethiopia is something that had been expected by many of us in such a short while. Thanks to the reform process, thanks to the courageous measure by the Prime Minister, this has happened. It's unique in the sense that this has happened without the intervention of any third party, without significant intervention of any third party to bring them together. As you know, over the last 20 years, the two countries were in a state of no war and no peace situation. Earlier on, we have had disastrous war. Now, this has happened. And now both countries have agreed actually to cease this era of conflict. They have agreed to closely cooperate in various areas, in political, economic, social, and cultural areas. And they have agreed also to reconnect their communication lines. There is now a telecommunication line between the two countries. The airline has resumed. There is an air flight between Eritrea and Ethiopia nowadays. There is also, now we are in the process of beginning the usage of the Asab port as well for import and export purposes. That had been idle for almost the last 20-some years. There is also peoples-to-peoples contacts, immense contacts, because these two countries, the people were similar people. These are people with the same culture, the same traditions, the same custom, and the same language. And now they have started coming together, and trade link has been started already. And these are some of the areas where we are working together. So,
Dr. Mustafa, you've been following peace and security issues in the Horn of Africa and, you know, in East Africa generally. What do you see as the biggest security impact that this will have on the region?
Dr. Abiy has catapulted himself into a regional figure, an African figure perhaps, that is interested and is keen, not just keen, but working towards aggressively working towards a peaceful resolution of the conflicts in the region. The Horn of Africa and the larger Horn and Greater Lakes region in Africa potential is so much, so that these countries can within under a decade, Beatrice, come out of, lift everybody into middle class. But this is not happening because of the challenges to do with peace and security, the wars that we are having and we are seeing. And we hope that the rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea is going to translate into positive results that is then going to impact the other parts of the Horn of Africa.
Right. A final comment from you, Ambassador Mufti, though. Looking at these reforms both in the region and domestically in Ethiopia, you've talked about how radical they are. How sustainable, though, are they in the long run, and how successful do you think they're going to be?
Well, I hope and believe that it will be sustainable and it will be successful as well, because it is in the interest of the majority of our people in the region. This is the reform that has come for the people's interest. This is a reform that will transform their life, a reform that will tremendously affect their life, and therefore people are caring for it. This is, if the Prime Minister is cut for this, is very well determined, down to the earth, and people's leader who works 7-24 hours and who really has people's heart at the people's interest at his heart. And people have realized that, and people are more or less fully behind him. And this is a guarantee. As long as you have popular support, and as long as the people will lend you their full support, definitely your reform will be sustainable. It's not a reform that is catering for the interests of the minorities or few elites. It's a reform that addresses the interests of the majority of the people in our country as well as in the region. And that is a guarantee. And this is also an idea that time has come for, and I believe it will be sustainable and it will achieve a lot.
Ambassador Mufti and Dr. Mustafa Ali, thank you both for being with us on Talk Africa. Well, that's all we have time for this week, but thank you to Ambassador Dina Mufti and Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali for sharing their insights on the program. Remember to keep the conversation going online through our Facebook and Twitter handles. You can also catch this and previous episodes of Talk Africa on our YouTube playlist and the CGTN Africa website. Remember to tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team in Nairobi, goodbye.